Listen to me. All of you talk about motivation, but motivation comes and goes. It's temporary. It's like fire, bright at first, but it dies if you don't keep feeding it. What I'm talking about today is something deeper, something stronger, something that doesn't depend on your mood, your energy, your feelings. I'm talking about habits. Habits that turn average people into machines. Habits that make you unstoppable. You want to win? Stop waiting to feel like it. Winners don't rely on feelings. Winners rely on systems. Winners rely on consistency. Winners rely on disciplined habits that work even on the days they don't want to work. Some of you keep telling me, hey, Ed, I don't know how to stay motivated. And I'm telling you, you don't need motivation. You need structure. You need daily routines that hold you accountable when your emotions convince you to take the day off. Your feelings are not in charge. You are. Every success story you admire, every champion, every millionaire, every leader didn't get there because they were motivated. They got there because they built habits that lined up with their vision. They decided that their actions would speak louder than their excuses. They built a lifestyle around their goals, not just a moment of motivation. Let me be real with you. You cannot build a big life with small habits. You cannot expect greatness from inconsistency. You cannot expect transformation if you keep doing the same comfortable things every day. Motivation wakes you up, but habits keep you going. When you build unstoppable habits, you stop negotiating with yourself. You stop saying tomorrow. You stop depending on hype. You create momentum that doesn't quit. And when momentum hits your life, everything changes. Your confidence changes. Your mindset changes. Your discipline changes. Your discipline changes. Your results change. This is the next level beyond motivation. It's not about feeling inspired. It's about building a life where success becomes the outcome of your daily decision. It's about becoming the kind of person who doesn't break promises to yourself. It's about waking up every day and choosing actions that match the future you want. So today, I need you to stop chasing motivation and start designing your habits. Stop waiting for inspiration and start creating structure. Because once you build the right habit, you won't be unstoppable because you're motivated. You'll be unstoppable because you're consistent. Discipline outlasts emotion. And if there's one truth I need you to understand deep in your bones, it's this. You will never rise to the level of your feeling. You will always fall to the level of your discipline. Your emotions are inconsistent. They shift with the weather, with your mood, with the circumstances around you. But discipline, real discipline, is stable. It is grounded. It does not move because you feel tired. It does not bend because you feel discouraged. It does not stop because life throws obstacles in your path. Discipline is the backbone of greatness, the invisible power behind every champion, every leader, every person who has done something extraordinary with their lives. And when you grasp the truth that your emotions cannot be trusted, but your discipline can be trained, you start taking control of your destiny in a way that motivation alone can never give you. Every single day you wake up, you are walking into a battle between what you feel and what you're committed to. Some days you wake up fired up, excited, energized. Well, most days, listen to me, you wake up neutral, maybe even tired, maybe even frustrated, maybe even discouraged. And that's the moment where average people lose because they are waiting for a feeling. They want to feel good. They want to feel inspired. They want to feel ready. But discipline doesn't need to feel good. Discipline doesn't need energy. Discipline doesn't need sunshine and perfect conditions. Discipline shows up because discipline is a decision, not an emotion. You will never reach excellence if you build your life around your emotions. Emotions are temporary. They rush in and rush out like waves on the shore. One moment you feel unstoppable. The next moment you feel overwhelmed. One moment you're ready to conquer the world. The next moment you just want to lay in bed. And if that is the standard you live by, you will always be inconsistent. You will always be hot one day and cold the next. You will always start strong and finish weak. And inconsistency is the enemy of greatness. Nobody becomes powerful by being emotional. People become powerful by being disciplined. I want you to think about the greatest athletes, the greatest thinkers, the greatest business leaders, the greatest champions in any field. Do you really believe they woke up every day feeling motivated, feeling inspired, feeling like giving their best? Absolutely not. They had days where they felt broken, days where they felt tired, days where they had doubts, days where they had fears. But they didn't allow those feelings to dictate their actions. They didn't say, I don't feel like training today, because their identity was stronger than their emotion. Their discipline overruled their mood. And I need you to understand something. Discipline's not a talent you're born with. Discipline is not something only special people have. Discipline is a muscle. And like any muscle, the more you use it, the stronger it gets. If you keep giving in to your emotions, your discipline stays weak. If you start ignoring the emotional voice and listening to the committed voice, your discipline grows. And when your discipline grows, your life expands. Your confidence expands. Your sense of control expands. Your possibilities expand. When you make discipline a lifestyle, something incredible happens. You start trusting yourself. And trusting yourself is one of the greatest forms of power you can possess. Most people try to build confidence through positive thinking, through hype, through trying to feel good. But confidence doesn't come from emotion. Confidence comes from discipline. When you discipline yourself to do what you say you would do every single day, regardless of how you feel, you start believing in your own word. You start respecting yourself more. You start understanding that you are a person who follows through. And that type of internal trust is magnetic. It changes how you speak, how you walk, how you move, how you tackle challenges. When you trust yourself, nothing can shake you because you've proven to yourself repeatedly that you are reliable even under pressure. There will always be days when your emotions betray you, days when you feel unmotivated, days when you feel discouraged, days when you feel tired, days when you feel anxious, days when you feel like quitting. But that's exactly why discipline is essential. Discipline becomes the bridge between your goals and your actions. It becomes the anchor when your emotions try to pull you off course. It becomes the voice that says, I know you don't feel like it, but we're doing it anyway. And that single decision to show up even when you don't feel like it is the birthplace of transformation. One of the biggest lies people tell themselves, I'll start when I feel ready. Let me break something to you gently. You will never feel fully ready. Readiness is not an emotion. Readiness is a choice. You become ready through preparation. You become ready through repetition. You become ready through disciplined action. If you wait for the perfect moment, a perfect feeling, you will wait forever. People who change their lives don't wait for emotional permission. They create momentum through disciplined action, and their feelings eventually catch up. Let me give you an example. Waking up early. There's not a single day, listen to me, not one day where waking up early feels amazing for everybody. Even the most disciplined people have mornings where they want to stay in bed. But the difference is disciplined people have trained themselves to ignore that emotional resistance. They have built habits that override their mood. They don't ask themselves, Joe, I feel like getting up. They tell themselves, get up. We've got work to do. Your feelings are not trustworthy. Your feelings will talk you out of your dreams. Your feelings will negotiate with your future. Your feelings will convince you that comfort is better than growth. But discipline tells the truth. Discipline says, you want a different life? Then do something different. Discipline says, you made a promise to yourself. Honor it. Discipline says, you can rest later. Right now we grind. Discipline protects your future from your excuse. And hear me clearly. Discipline doesn't make life easier. It makes you stronger. The challenges don't disappear, but you become the kind of person who can handle them. You become the kind of person who doesn't break under pressure. You become the kind of person who doesn't lose control when things get difficult. Discipline builds resilience. Discipline builds mental toughness. Discipline builds the ability to endure, and those qualities, not motivation, are what create greatness. What people don't tell you is that discipline also creates freedom. You think discipline is restrictive, but it's the opposite. When you are disciplined, you have control over your life. You have control over your habits, your health, your time, your outcome. You stop living reactively and start living intentionally. You stop drifting and start directing. You stop surviving and start thriving. Discipline is the price you pay for freedom later. You sacrifice the comfort now to gain the life you want later. And here's something else. Disciplined people feel emotions too. They feel stress, frustration, fear, boredom, doubt, but they don't let those emotions determine their actions. They don't let their emotional storms ruin their progress. They have learned how to anchor themselves. They have learned how to move forward, even when their feelings are trying to pull them back. You must get to the point where you stop doing things only when you feel motivated. Motivation is a spark. Discipline is the engine. Motivation might start the journey, but discipline keeps the wheels turning. Motivation gives you energy in the moment, but discipline turns that energy into long-term success. Motivation is what gets you in the gym for 2 days. Discipline is what keeps you there for 2 years. Motivation helps you clean your room today. Discipline helps you keep your life in order every day. Motivation helps you start a project. Discipline helps you finish it. And if you want to build discipline, stop trying to overhaul your entire life in one day. Start with small commitments. Start with small commitments. Wake up 15 minutes earlier. Drink more water. Read 10 pages. Write down your goals. Do something every day that requires effort, something that stretches you, something that teaches your mind that you are in control, not your emotions. Small disciplines repeated daily grow into powerful habits. And those habits become the foundation of your identity. And once your identity shifts, your life transforms. People fail not because they lack desire, but because they lack discipline. Desire is easy. Dreaming is easy. Talking is easy. Talking is easy. But showing up every day, no matter what, that's the real challenge. And that's why discipline separates the successful from the unsuccessful. It separates the people who talk about greatness from the people who actually achieve it. Your future self is begging you to become disciplined, begging you to stop giving in to temporary emotions, begging you to break the cycle of inconsistency, begging you to build routines that support your dreams, begging you to become stronger than your excuses. Discipline may feel difficult in the moment, but the pain of discipline is nothing compared to the pain of regret. Regret is heavy. Regret is permanent. Regret is the voice that haunts you later, saying, you could have done more. Discipline prevents that regret. Discipline ensures that when you look back, you're proud, not ashamed. Proud that you kept going. Proud that you didn't quit. Proud that you chose growth over comfort. So make a decision, not a wish, not a hope, not a maybe. Make a decision that from today forward, your emotions will not run your life. Your discipline will. Your commitment will. Your habits will. And when you live like that consistently, you become unstoppable. Not because you always feel unstoppable, but because you act unstoppable. And that right there is the real power. Your habits predict your future. And whether you realize it or not, every single action you repeat daily is quietly shaping the life you will live tomorrow. Most people think their future will be determined by one big moment, one big opportunity, one big breakthrough. But the truth is far less dramatic and far more powerful. Your future is already being built right now in the little choices you make when no one is watching. It's built in what you do consistently, not occasionally. It's built in the habits you practice every day, whether they are serving your growth or sabotaging it. The scary part is that most people are completely unaware of the habits they built, yet those habits are deciding everything. Their health, their mindset, their career, their relationships, their finances, and even the way they feel about themselves. The reason habits are so powerful is because they run on autopilot. You don't think about brushing your teeth. You don't think about checking your phone. You don't think about how you respond to stress. These patterns happen automatically because your brain saves energy by turning repeated actions into routines. And once a habit becomes automatic, it becomes part of your identity. Your identity shapes your behavior. Your behavior shapes your results, and your results shape your life. So whether you're aware of it or not, your habits are the architects of your destiny. People who succeed in life don't rely on luck. They don't rely on random strokes of fortune. They rely on habits that move them closer to their goals every single day. They understand that discipline beats desire, consistency beats excitement, and systems beat motivation. They don't wake up thinking, I hope today is a good day. They wake up and create a good day through their routines. Their habits give them direction, stability, and momentum. Meanwhile, people who struggle often have habits that work against them, habits that waste time, drain energy, create chaos, or keep them stuck in the same cycle year after year. Their results are not a mystery. They are simply the outcome of the habits they repeat. If you want to know where your life is headed, don't look at your dreams or your goals. Look at your habits. Your habits are the clearest window into your future. If you read daily, learn daily, practice discipline daily, build skills daily, push yourself daily, then your future will reflect that growth. But if you procrastinate daily, complain daily, waste time daily, make excuses daily, or numb your potential with distraction, your future will reflect that too. It all adds up. Nothing is neutral. Every habit you repeat is either adding to your life or subtracting from it. The problem is that people overestimate the importance of big actions and underestimate the impact of small habits. They think success requires huge leaps, but it actually requires small steps taken consistently over time. Eating healthy one day doesn't change your body, but eating healthy for 200 days will. Saving money one day won't build wealth, but saving little by little every month will. Studying for 1 hour won't make you an expert, but studying consistently every week absolutely will. Absolutely will. It's the compound effect. Tiny actions accumulating into massive change over time. And the people who understand this principle are the ones who consistently outperform everyone else. Your habits are like seeds. When you plant them, nothing happens immediately. You don't see results right away. You don't get rewarded instantly. That's why most people quit. But those who understand the long game sow the seeds anyway. They water them, protect them, nurture them. They remain consistent even when progress seems invisible, because progress is rarely visible at the beginning. It happens quietly, internally, slowly, until one day the results become impossible to ignore. And when that moment comes, people call them unlucky, but there's no luck. There's only the harvest of disciplined habits. Another truth you must embrace is that your habits reflect your priority. If you say you want to be healthy, but you don't practice healthy habits, then health is not your priority, no matter what you say. If you say you want to grow financially, but your spending habits are out of control, then stability is not your priority. If you say you want to succeed, but you spend hours scrolling, then success is not your priority. Your actions reveal the truth more than your words ever will. And the moment you align your habits with your goals, your entire life changes trajectory. Habits also shape your mindset. If you practice habits of gratitude, discipline, learning, and structure, your mind becomes sharper, clearer, more resilient. You become the kind of person who sees opportunity instead of obstacles. You develop mental strength because habits reinforce stability. But if you practice habits of negativity, avoidance, comparison, and chaos, your mindset becomes fragile. You become reactive instead of proactive, overwhelmed instead of empowered. That's why changing your habits is not just about changing your behavior, it's about changing your entire mental framework. You must also understand that habits are connected. Good habits support other good habits. Bad habits feed other bad habits. When you wake up early, you have time to plan your day. When you plan your day, you make better decisions. When you make better decisions, you feel more in control. When you feel more in control, you take more responsibility. One good habit begins a positive chain reaction. Likewise, hitting snooze leads to rushing, leads to stress. Stress leads to poor choices. Poor choices lead to guilt, and guilt leads to more bad habits. One bad habit can trigger a downward spiral. This is why you must be intentional about the routines you allow into your life. Building better habits does not require perfection. It requires awareness, consistency, and commitment. You don't need to change everything overnight. You just need to start with one habit that aligns with the future you want. One habit that pushes you forward. One habit that challenges your comfort. Once that habit becomes strong, add another. Over time, you create a life filled with structure, purpose, and clarity. You create momentum. And momentum is powerful because once it starts working in your favor, it carries you forward even on the tough days. Habits become easier. Discipline becomes natural. Growth becomes automatic. At some point, your habits stop being something you do and start becoming who you are. You become the kind of person who reads, who trains, who plans, who executes, who finishes, who grows, who pushes, and when your identity shifts, your life follows. That is why habits predict your future. They shape your identity, and your identity shapes everything else. One of the biggest mistakes people make is believing that their feelings determine their habits. But if you let your feelings run your life, you will never achieve consistency. Feelings are temporary. Habits create stability. Instead of waiting to feel motivated, you build habits that automatically move you toward your goals, whether you feel like it or not. You train your mind to follow your commitment, not your emotions. And this shift from emotional living to intentional living is what transforms your future. Your habits are also influenced by the environment you place yourself in. If you surround yourself with people who aim low, your habits will sink. If you surround yourself with people who push themselves, your habits will rise. Your environment reinforces your routine, so choose one that supports your growth. Rearrange your surrounding, remove temptations, add accountability, and create a lifestyle that makes good habits easy and bad habits difficult. If you change your environment, your habits will follow. And when your habits change, your future changes. You must also protect your habits. It's easy to slip back into old patterns if you're not careful. One bad day becomes two become a week. And suddenly the momentum you built disappears. That's why discipline matters. Discipline is the guardian of your habits. Discipline keeps you consistent. Discipline prevents you from negotiating with yourself. Discipline ensures that even on bad days, you don't lose the progress you worked so hard to build. Your habits will determine whether you rise or fall. They will determine whether you grow or stagnate, whether you succeed or struggle. Your habits are building your future right now, quietly but powerfully. And every day you have a choice. Continue with the habits that keep you stuck, or replace them with habits that elevate your life. That choice, repeated over and over, becomes your destiny. So look at your habits honestly. Ask yourself if they reflect the future you want or the past you're stuck in. Because your habits are not just actions. They are the blueprint of your life. And if you want a different future, you must first build different habits. Only then will your life transform from the inside out. Small actions repeated consistently have the power to transform your entire life, even if those actions seem insignificant in the moment. Most people overlook this truth because they are conditioned to believe that success requires huge, dramatic efforts. They think they need to take massive leaps to get ahead, to reinvent themselves overnight, to completely overhaul their routines in one bold move. But real transformation does not happen in one giant step. It happens in a series of small, deliberate steps that compound over time. The real power of growth lies in the discipline of doing the small things, the things no one celebrates. Because those small actions create the foundation for every major accomplishment. People admire the results, the achievements, the victories, but they rarely want to talk about the small habits that made those results possible. They see the athlete winning, but not the early morning training session. They see the entrepreneur succeeding, but not the years of quiet, consistent grind. They see the student excelling, but not the hours of unseen practice. The truth is simple. Small actions create big outcomes. Consistency creates mastery. Repetition turns effort into excellence. And anyone who embraces this truth can build a life far beyond what motivation alone can deliver. Humans are creatures of habit. Our lives are shaped not by the occasional decisions we make, but by the routines we repeat. Every small positive action reinforces our discipline and builds confidence. Every small negative action chips away at our potential and weakens our momentum. The key to unlocking growth is understanding the role of these tiny repeated behaviors. That may seem harmless or insignificant in the moment. Skipping a workout, wasting 10 minutes, choosing distraction over progress, but those moments add up. Over weeks, months, and years, they compound into either success or regret. Every great achievement begins with a small step. A single push-up leads to fitness. A single page leads to learning. A single dollar saved leads to wealth. A single act of discipline leads to a lifestyle of consistency. And here is the part people struggle to accept. The small action must come first. Before you feel ready, before you feel motivated, before everything makes sense. Success is built from movement, not motivation. Once you take one small step, the next becomes easier. Your brain learns to trust you. Your identity begins to shift. You stop seeing yourself as someone who wishes for change and start seeing yourself as someone who takes action. One of the reasons small actions are so effective is that they remove resistance. Big goals often feel overwhelming. They create pressure, fear, and anxiety. But small actions feel manageable. They allow you to build momentum without the weight of perfection. Anyone can read for 5 minutes, write one paragraph, take a short walk, plan tomorrow, drink a glass of water, or make a short list of priorities. These small actions may not change your life overnight, but they absolutely change the direction of your life. Because once you start moving, you start strengthening the muscle of discipline. And discipline is what leads to transformation. Small actions also work because they fight against procrastination. When you set goals that seem too large, your mind resists. It convinces you to delay, to wait for the perfect moment, to prepare a little more. But when you break that goal into tiny steps, the mental resistance disappears. You no longer fight with yourself. You no longer get stuck in analysis paralysis. You simply do the next small action. And the moment you act, even in the smallest way, your brain releases momentum building chemicals that make future actions easier. This is how progress grows, through micro wins. Another important truth is that small actions create habits, and habits create identity. When you perform a small beneficial action repeatedly, your subconscious mind begins to accept a new narrative about who you are. If you write daily, you begin to see yourself as a writer. If you train daily, you begin to see yourself as an athlete. If you save consistently, you begin to see yourself as financially disciplined. That identity shift is powerful because it influences all future decisions. When you change your identity through consistent small actions, you no longer have to force discipline. Discipline becomes who you are. People often underestimate how small actions stack over time. Imagine improving by just 1% each day. That seems trivial, almost pointless. But mathematically, 1% daily improvement compounds into being 37 times better in a year. On the other hand, if you decline by 1% daily, you end up nearly at zero. This is the power of compounding. Small improvements grow exponentially, while small declines shrink exponentially. Every choice you make nudges you in one direction or the other, even if the impact is invisible today. That invisibility is what causes many to quit. Small progress feels slow, unexciting, and unrewarding. You might train for weeks and not see major changes. You might study for months and still feel unsure. You might save money and feel like you haven't moved closer to your goal. But the people who stay consistent through this invisible phase are the ones who eventually break through. They understand that progress happens internally before it shows externally. The roots grow before the tree emerges. The foundation strengthens before the structure rises. And just because you don't see progress doesn't mean it's not happening. The opposite is also true. Small negative habits often feel harmless in the beginning. Wasting 10 minutes doesn't seem destructive. Skipping one workout doesn't feel like failure. Spending a little extra money doesn't seem dangerous. But small negative habits compound silently. They create patterns of procrastination, comfort, and complacency. They weaken your discipline and strengthen your excuses. And over time, they build a gap between the life you want and the life you want and the life you were living. That's why you cannot afford to underestimate small action, positive or negative. They are always shaping your future. Consistency is not about intensity. It's about commitment. Anyone can work hard for a day. Anyone can push themselves once in a while. But the ones who rise above the rest are those who master the art of showing up, even when the effort seems tiny. They understand that small actions repeated over time create unstoppable momentum. They know that the one who takes a small step every day will always outperform the one who takes giant steps once in a while. Slow progress is still progress. Small progress is still progress. Inconsistent effort, no matter how intense, never beats daily consistency. There is another reason small actions matter. They build trust in yourself. Every time you follow through on a small commitment, you prove to yourself that you can be trusted. You show yourself that you are reliable, disciplined, focused, and committed. Self-trust is a superpower. People lose confidence not because they fail, but because they consistently break promises to themselves. When you keep promises through small daily actions, your confidence grows naturally. And confidence makes discipline easier. When discipline becomes easier, success becomes inevitable. Small actions also allow you to sustain effort without burnout. Big efforts require big energy, and big energy isn't available every day, but small actions are sustainable. You can do them even on the days you feel tired, stressed, or unmotivated. This is why small steps build resilience. They train you to move forward even on difficult days. They create a baseline of productivity that prevents you from falling backwards. Over time, you build a powerful rhythm of consistent effort that becomes part of your lifestyle. And eventually, the small actions that once felt insignificant become second nature. They become automatic. They become part of your daily rhythm. That's when the real transformation began. Because once small positive habits become automatic, they no longer require willpower. They work in your favor even when you're not actively thinking about them. They turn discipline into a natural pattern instead of a forced effort. And when that happens, your life begins to shift in extraordinary ways. The smallest actions carried out consistently will always outperform the biggest actions done occasionally. Because consistency builds character. Consistency builds confidence. Consistency builds credibility. And consistency builds achievement. Every major transformation in your life will be the result of small steps taken repeatedly, even when they felt too small to matter. But they did matter. They mattered more than anything else. They built the foundations of the person you became. Small actions are the true engine of progress. They are the quiet force behind every success story. They are the seeds planted today that grow into the results you will harvest tomorrow. When you embrace the power of small actions, you unlock the path to growth others will never experience. And once you understand this truth and live it daily, there is nothing you cannot achieve. Relying on your feelings to guide your actions is one of the biggest reasons people fail to see progress in their lives. Feelings are unpredictable, unstable, and easily influenced by your environment, your mood, your energy level, or even the people around you. If you wait until you feel motivated, inspired, or energized to take action, you will always be inconsistent, and inconsistency is what destroys momentum. That's why systems are more important than feelings. Systems give you structure. Systems give you clarity. Systems give you direction even when your emotions try to distract you. When you learn to prioritize systems over feelings, you unlock a level of discipline that separates you from the average person who allows their emotions to control their behavior. Feelings change every single day. One day you wake up excited. The next day you're tired. One day you're pumped to work. The next day you feel lazy. One day you're confident. The next day you're doubting yourself. If your actions are tied to these fluctuating emotions, your progress will rise and fall with them. But when you build systems, specific routines, schedules, habits, and rules, you take your emotions out of the decision-making process. You create automatic behavior that works regardless of how you feel. You turn discipline into a consistent force instead of a temporary moment of inspiration. This is how successful people operate. They do what needs to be done, not what they feel like doing. Think about any professional environment. Pilots don't fly based on feelings. They follow checklists and systems. Surgeons don't operate based on emotions. They follow procedures. Engineers don't build bridges based on mood. They follow exact steps and tested process. Why? Because success in a high-level task requires precision, not emotion. It requires structure, not impulse. Your life is no different. If you want high-level results, you need high-level systems. Systems guard you from emotional inconsistency. They ensure progress even when everything inside you is resisting. One of the most powerful benefits of systems is that they simplify your day. Instead of wasting time debating whether you should take action, you already know the answer. Your system decides for you. You remove negotiation with yourself, which is one of the biggest sources of procrastination. When you say, should I work out today? Or should I study now or later? Or maybe I'll do it tomorrow. You create mental battles. Every battle drains your energy. But when you have a system, like training every morning at the same time, you eliminate those battles. You don't stop to think about it. You just follow your routine. Systems free your mind from decision fatigue. The truth is that feelings will always try to protect you from discomfort. They want to keep you comfortable, safe, and relaxed. Your feelings don't care about your goals. They care about avoiding effort. That's why relying on feelings leads to procrastination, excuses, and stagnation. But systems push you toward growth, even if it's uncomfortable. They keep you aligned with your goals, even when your emotions try to pull you away. Systems don't ask, are you in the mood? Systems simply follow a predetermined path, and that path leads you to the person you want to become. Every successful person you admire has systems. Athletes follow training schedules. Writers follow daily writing routines. Entrepreneurs follow morning rituals and planning systems. They don't wait for inspiration. They create an environment where action is automatic. This is what separates them from the masses. Create consistency, and consistency creates results. Motivation sparks action, but systems sustain it. When you build strong systems, you eliminate the biggest danger of success: inconsistency. Many people start strong and fade away because they rely on motivation. They begin with excitement, but when life gets difficult or their emotions drop, they stop. Systems prevent this collapse by providing stability. They anchor your actions, making you dependable even when circumstances change. You become someone who follows through, someone who executes, someone who doesn't quit when emotions shift. Another reason systems matter more than feeling is that systems build momentum. Momentum is one of the most powerful forces in personal development. Once you start moving consistently, even with small steps, you feel unstoppable. But momentum only builds through repetition. Feelings, however, are unreliable and break momentum easily. You might work hard for 3 days due to motivation, but then take 4 days off because you're tired or discouraged. That inconsistency destroys momentum. Systems keep the momentum alive by requiring action daily or weekly, no matter how you feel. Systems also help you measure your progress. When you act based on feeling, your actions are random. You can't track your growth. You can't identify patterns, and you can't improve with intention. But systems are measurable. When you follow a routine, you can see what works and what doesn't. You can adjust the system, you can optimize it. You can improve your efficiency. Systems turn progress into a science instead of an emotional guess. And the beautiful thing about systems is they compound over time. Your life improves not because you make huge changes overnight, but because you repeatedly apply the same system day after day. Over time, the system shapes your identity. If you follow a workout system, you become someone who lives a healthy lifestyle. If you follow a study system, you become someone committed to learning. If you follow a financial system, you become someone responsible with money. Systems don't just change your behavior, they change who you are. Feelings are powerful, but they are temporary. Systems are not emotional, they are structural. They remain steady through stress, exhaustion, fear, and doubt. Relying on feelings keeps you inconsistent. Relying on systems makes you disciplined. And discipline always beats motivation because discipline is built on choices, not emotion. Discipline grows stronger the more you practice it, while motivation becomes weaker the more you depend on it. Systems also teach you the truth about success. It's not about doing the hardest thing once. It's about doing the simple things repeatedly. People assume success is about big actions, but in reality, it's about consistent execution of small structured habits. These habits, repeated daily with a system, create unstoppable progress. You don't climb mountains in one jump. You climb them step by step, and your system is what determines those steps. There will be days when your feelings completely collapse. Days when you wake up tired, frustrated, unmotivated, or overwhelmed. Days when quitting feels easier than continuing. If you're relying on motivation, those days will stop you. But if you have a system, you will still act. You will still show up. You will still push forward. That is what makes systems superior. They protect you when your emotions fail you. What truly matters in life is your ability to follow through. Anyone can be excited for a moment. Anyone can start something with passion. But the ones who finish, the ones who achieve, the ones who rise above everyone else are those who build systems that keep them going long after their excitement fades. Systems create the structure that feelings cannot provide. When you commit to building systems, you take control of your life. You stop letting your emotions dictate your results. You stop being reactive. You become proactive. You create habits that drive you towards success instead of waiting for motivation to push you. You become someone who moves regardless of obstacles. You become someone who shows up regardless of circumstances. You become someone who doesn't wait for the perfect moment. You create the moment. This is the path to mastery. This is the path to growth. This is the path to reliability, discipline, and transformation. Systems turn your goals into actions, your actions into habits, and your habits into identity. Once you reach that level, you're no longer controlled by moods or feeling. You operate on structure. You operate on commitment. You operate with purpose. And when you live that way, success is no longer a matter of each. It becomes a matter of a win. When you begin to understand that identity shapes behavior, everything in your life starts to shift in ways you never imagined. Most people believe they can simply set new goals and suddenly become a new person. But the truth is much deeper than that. You don't rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the strength of your system, your standards, and ultimately your identity. Everything you do, every action you take, every choice you make is a reflection of who you believe you are. If you see yourself as someone who always quits, you will quit. If you see yourself as someone who is inconsistent, your actions will mirror that inconsistency. But the very moment you shift your identity into someone who is disciplined, unstoppable, resilient, and committed, your behavior transforms accordingly. It's not magic. It's alignment. It's the understanding that your internal world shapes your external results. And until you change the internal identity, you will always struggle with changing the external behavior. Think about the times in your life when you tried to change something. Maybe you wanted to wake up earlier, start working out, start studying consistently, or stop procrastinating. You probably started strong for a few days because motivation was fresh and high. But slowly, little by little, the old patterns began to pull you back. You found yourself slipping into the same habits you promised you would leave behind. You told yourself, I'll start again tomorrow. But tomorrow became next week, and next week became next month. And deep down, you felt frustrated. You weren't failing because you didn't want change. You weren't failing because you didn't try. You were failing because the identity attached to those old habits was still alive inside you. You were trying to build a new life on an old foundation. You were trying to behave like a new person while still believing like the old one. And no one can sustain new habits with an old identity. Your identity is a silent force, more powerful than motivation, more influential than discipline, and more persuasive than fear. It controls your choices at a subconscious level. If your identity is rooted in self-doubt, you will take actions that confirm that doubt. If your identity is built on insecurity, your behaviors will reflect uncertainty, hesitation, and inconsistency. But if your identity is solid, truly solid, built on confidence, discipline, and commitment, your actions will fall in line even on the days you don't feel like performing. When you become someone who sees themselves as disciplined, discipline becomes natural. When you become someone who sees themselves as committed, quitting no longer feels like an option. When you become someone who sees themselves as unstoppable, challenges stop looking like roadblocks and start looking like opportunities to prove who you are. Every action you take is a vote toward the person you believe you are. If you want to become someone who works out every day, you first have to see yourself as someone who takes care of their health and values discipline. If you want to become someone who studies every day, you must view yourself as someone who takes knowledge seriously. If you want to become someone who builds a business, you must shift into the identity of a builder, a creator, a leader before the results ever show up. Identity drives behavior, not the other way around. People think results create identity, but it is identity that creates results. Waiting for results before you shift who you believe yourself to be is the reason most people stay stuck forever. The real transformation happens the moment you say, this is who I am now, and your actions begin to align with that statement. When someone identifies as a runner, they don't negotiate about running, they run. When someone identifies as a disciplined person, they don't negotiate about discipline. They show up. When someone identifies as someone who doesn't quit, they won't quit. Their identity becomes the engine that drives their behavior. Not their mood, not their feelings, not their circumstances. Identity overrides excuses. Identity overpowers laziness. Identity eliminates negotiation. And once you shift your identity, your habits transform from obligations into expressions of who you are. But identity isn't changed overnight. It's built through repeated evidence. You cannot merely tell yourself, I am disciplined, and magically expect your life to change. You must give your brain evidence of discipline through consistent actions, even small ones. Start with something small, something you know you can do every day. Maybe it's waking up 10 minutes earlier. Maybe it's drinking a glass of water first thing in the morning. Maybe it's reading one page of a book. These small actions create small wins, and small wins create identity shifts. These shifts accumulate, and as they accumulate, your belief about who you are begins to change. Over time, your habits stop feeling forced and begin feeling natural because they match the identity you have built. Identity is not created through intensity, it is created through consistency. You must also detach from the identity that has been holding you back. Some people hold on to old versions of themselves because it feels familiar, comfortable, and predictable, even if it's destructive. But your future cannot exist if you keep feeding your past. Many people say, and that's just who I am, as if identity is permanent, but identity is not fixed. It is flexible, adaptable, and moldable. You can choose a new identity at any moment. You can decide to become disciplined. You can decide to become focused. You can decide to become unstoppable. You do not need permission from anyone. You do not need validation. You only need commitment to the process of becoming the person you want to be. When you change your identity, your environment must change as well. Surround yourself with people who reinforce the identity you want, not the identity you are leaving behind. If you want to be disciplined, spend time with disciplined people. If you want to grow, surround yourself with people who are growing. If you want to elevate, connect with people who challenge and inspire you. Your environment plays a massive role in shaping your identity. You cannot step into a new identity while staying surrounded by old influences. The people around you don't just impact your behavior, they impact your self-perception. And self-perception impacts everything. Your words also shape your identity. What you say about yourself becomes a declaration, a blueprint your brain follows. Every time you say, I'm lazy, I'm inconsistent, I always quit, you reinforce that identity. Your brain accepts it as truth. But when you say, I'm disciplined, I'm strong, I'm focused, even before you feel it, you begin creating a new internal narrative. And that narrative becomes the story your actions follow. Speak the identity you want, not the identity you want to escape. But remember, identity begins with action. If you call yourself disciplined, but take undisciplined actions, your mind will not accept the identity shift. You cannot lie to yourself. You must build your identity through action, not through empty declarations. When you tell yourself you will wake up early, and you actually do, you reinforce your new identity. When you commit to working out and follow through, you reinforce your new identity. When you say you will stay consistent, and you do, you reinforce your new identity. Every fulfilled promise strengthens identity. Every broken promise weakens it. That is why changing your identity requires honesty. Brutal, transparent honesty. If you truly want to become someone new, you must confront the old patterns that have been defining you. You must admit where you have been inconsistent. You must admit where you have allowed weakness to control you. You must admit where you have been settling. Because you cannot fix what you refuse to acknowledge. And acknowledgement is the first step to identity transformation. As you begin to build a new identity, you will experience resistance. Your old habits will try to pull you back. Your mind will try to convince you that you're not capable, not good enough, not disciplined enough, because the brain is wired to protect familiar patterns. But you must push through this resistance. This is the friction that comes with transformation. This is the battle between who you were and who you want to become. And every time you choose the new identity over the old, you weaken the grip of the past and strengthen the foundation of the future. You will also have moments when you fall short. This is not failure. This is human. What matters is how quickly you return to the identity you are building. The faster you bounce back, the stronger your identity becomes. The goal is not perfection. The goal is consistency. And true consistency comes from identity alignment, not motivation. Over time, your new identity becomes your default. You stop forcing discipline, start embodying. You stop trying to become confident and start living confidently. You stop chasing habits and start maintaining them naturally. The things that once felt difficult begin to feel normal because they are now part of who you are. And when your identity and your behavior merge into one powerful force, you become unstoppable. When identity shapes behavior, you no longer depend on motivation. You no longer depend on hype. You no longer depend on emotion. You operate from a deeper foundation, a foundation built on self-belief, self-definition, self-discipline, and self-respect. This is the transformation that leads to greatness. This is the shift that separates dreamers from achievers. This is the power that unlocks your next level. The truth is simple. Before you can change your life, you must change your identity. Before you can elevate your outcomes, you must elevate your standards. Before you can transform your habits, you must transform who you believe you are. Identity is the root. Behavior is the branch. Results are the fruit. Transform the root and the entire tree of your life transforms with it. When you eliminate negotiation with yourself, you step into a completely different level of power, clarity, and consistency. Most people lose not because they lack talent, ambition, or intelligence, but because they spend too much time arguing with their own mind. Every day becomes a battle between what they know they should do and what they feel like doing. And feelings win far too often. The moment you stop negotiating with yourself is the moment you take away the power of excuses, emotions, and temporary discomforts that have been holding you back your whole life. You start operating from decisions, not feelings. You start living from commitments, not moves. And that's when discipline becomes your natural state instead of something you struggle with. Every time you negotiate with yourself, you give your weaker self a chance to win. You give your laziness a voice. You give your fear authority. You give your comfort zone space to grow. You allow doubt, hesitation, and resistance to dictate your behavior. You wake up in the morning planning to work out, but the moment the bed feels warm, you start the negotiation. Or maybe I'll do it later. You promise yourself you'll study tonight, but when evening comes, your mind starts whispering, just rest for today. Tomorrow will be better. You plan to work on your goals, but as soon as you feel bored or tired, you begin debating whether it's worth it. This negotiation is the silent killer of potential. It is the invisible barrier between you and your greatness. It is the enemy of discipline, and the only way to win is to eliminate the negotiation entirely. When you decide something must become final, not negotiable, absolute. If you say you will wake up at 5 a.m., then you wake up at 5 a.m. You don't allow the comfort of your pillow to enter the conversation. If you say you will work out, you work out regardless of whether you feel motivated. If you say you will study for 2 hours, you do it without debating. If you say you will build your dream, you take action every day. No compromise, no excuses, no internal negotiation. This type of inner firmness creates mental strength that becomes unbreakable. You stop bending under pressure and start rising through it. You stop allowing your feelings to hijack your future. Negotiation with yourself is dangerous because your brain is designed to protect you, not to grow you. It will always choose comfort over pain, ease over effort, and safety over uncertainty. It will convince you to stay the same because change is uncomfortable. When you negotiate, you give power to the part of your brain that wants to keep you average. But when you eliminate negotiation, you give authority to the part of your mind that pushes you to evolve, expand, and elevate. You build a habit of automatic action, doing what needs to be done without wasting mental energy debating it. This is how champions operate. This is how high performers build momentum. This is how unstoppable people are created. Think about the people you admire. The athletes, entrepreneurs, creative, leaders, visionaries. They don't negotiate with themselves. They don't ask, do I feel like practicing today? They don't question whether they should show up. They don't wait for inspiration. They made a decision long before the moment arrived. They created a standard and locked it in. They honor their commitment even when they don't feel like it. That is why they win. They understand that the mind can be trained, shaped, and conditioned to follow instructions instead of emotions. And you can do the same. But eliminating negotiation is not easy in the beginning because you have spent years, maybe your entire life, negotiating with yourself. You built a habit of hesitation. You built a habit of seeking comfort. You built a habit of letting your weaker voice speak louder than your disciplined voice. So when you decide to eliminate negotiation, you will feel resistance. Your mind will try to pull you back. It will test you. It will tempt you. It will try to convince you that it's okay to break your commitments just this once. But this is the moment that matters most. If you resist the negotiation in that moment, you begin building a new identity of someone who does what they say they will do. Someone who is reliable, focused, disciplined, and unstoppable. The key is to make your decisions in advance. Decide your wake-up time. Decide your study time. Decide your workout schedule. Decide your work hours. Decide your priorities. And once they are set, treat them like unbreakable contracts with yourself. No discussion, no bargaining, no back and forth. When the time comes, you simply execute. This eliminates mental fatigue, reduces procrastination, and boosts confidence because you begin to trust yourself again. You stop breaking promises to yourself, and that trust becomes a powerful foundation for everything you do. Internal negotiation destroys self-trust. Every time you break your own commitment, you weaken your belief in your own discipline. You train your mind to think it's okay to quit. It's okay to delay. It's okay to break promises, and eventually you lose respect for yourself. This is why so many people feel stuck. They want to grow, but they don't trust themselves to follow through. Eliminating negotiation reverses this. It rebuilds internal confidence. It strengthens self-respect. It creates alignment between your intentions and your actions. When you say something, you begin to follow through automatically. You show yourself that you are someone who executes. And when your identity shifts in that direction, everything in your life changes. This habit of non-negotiation also increases mental clarity. Most people waste hours every day thinking about what they should do, when they should do it, or whether they should even start. They get mentally exhausted before they take the first step. They overthink, they hesitate, they worry. But when you eliminate negotiation, you remove all that noise. You free up your mental energy for doing the work instead of arguing about the work. Your decisions become clean and simple. You become more efficient. You become more productive. You become sharper, quicker, and more decisive. Eliminating internal negotiation also removes guilt. When you break your own commitments, you carry the weight of regret, shame, and disappointment. You feel like you betrayed yourself. But when you do what you said you do, even when it's hard, you feel empowered, strong, and proud. You build momentum. You build belief. You build a sense of control over your life. And that feeling is addictive. It pushes you to keep going. It fuels your discipline. It strengthens your identity as someone who shows up no matter what. Another powerful benefit is that when you eliminate negotiation, you eliminate inconsistency. Consistency is what separates dreamers from achievers. It's not about doing things perfectly. It's about doing them regularly. But you cannot be consistent when you are constantly negotiating with yourself. Negotiation leads to irregular habits, missed days, broken routine, and wasted potential. Removing negotiation stabilizes your habits. It creates repeatable patterns. It builds routines that eventually become your lifestyle. Once something becomes your lifestyle, it no longer requires motivation or effort. It becomes automatic. You also become more resilient. Life will throw challenges at you. You will have days when everything feels heavy, stressful, or overwhelming. But when you eliminate negotiation, you learn to perform under pressure. You learn to show up even when life isn't perfect. You learn to push through discomfort. You learn that your circumstances do not control your actions. You stop waiting for ideal conditions and start creating results regardless of the situation. That is true strength. That is true growth. That is what separates the average from the exceptional. Eliminating negotiation also teaches you to master your emotions. Emotions are real, but they are not reliable. They change constantly. They fluctuate with weather, sleep, stress, and countless external factors. If your actions depend on your emotions, you will always live an unstable life. But when your actions depend on your commitments, you become emotionally steady. You learn how to act even when you don't feel like it. You learn how to rise above temporary feeling. You learn emotional discipline, a skill that will carry you through every challenge in life. But to reach this level, you must commit fully. Not halfway, not sometimes, not only when it's easy. Eliminating negotiation requires full ownership of your life. You must stop blaming circumstances. You must stop waiting for the right moment. You must stop using excuses. You must choose to take responsibility for everything within your control. That is when true transformation begins. One of the most powerful ways to eliminate negotiation is by creating rituals, specific actions that you follow every day without thinking. Morning routine, workout routines, study routine, work routine. These rituals automate discipline. They remove decision making. They create structure. And structure destroys negotiation. When your day has a clear structure, there is no room for debate. There is only execution. Your environment must also support your non-negotiable mindset. Remove distraction. Remove temptations. Remove people who encourage your excuses. Surround yourself with people who honor their commitments, who show up, who push you to be better. When you are surrounded by disciplined people, your own discipline automatically rises. When you are surrounded by people who don't negotiate with themselves, you begin to adopt the same mindset. In time, eliminating negotiation becomes natural. You stop feeling the internal conflict. Tasks that once felt difficult begin to feel normal. Your mind becomes quieter. Your actions become sharper. Your confidence grows. You begin to trust yourself deeply. You begin to respect yourself. You begin to operate like someone who is truly unstoppable. This is the path to greatness, not motivation, but the elimination of the internal negotiation that has been stopping you from becoming the person you are meant to be. When you stop negotiating with yourself, you stop giving power to your excuses. You stop giving power to your fears. You stop giving power to your comfort zone. You take your power back. You take your discipline back. You take control of your life. Greatness requires one decision, the decision to eliminate negotiation once and for all. When you commit to that, everything else falls into place. You become consistent. You become disciplined. You become focused. You become unstoppable. You become the kind of person who doesn't just dream, you execute. And execution is what creates transformation. Execution is what builds success. Execution is what builds identity. Execution is what builds a life you can be proud of. You already have the potential. What you need is non-negotiable action. And the moment you eliminate negotiation with yourself, you unlock it. Building an environment for success is one of the most underestimated but most powerful key to transforming your life, because your surroundings shape your behavior far more than your intentions do. You can have the greatest goals, the strongest vision, and the deepest desire for change. But if your environment is not aligned with your growth, you will constantly feel resistance, distraction, and internal conflict. Most people try to change their life through motivation, willpower, or temporary bursts of discipline, but they ignore the very structure around them. The people, spaces, habits, routines, and influences that either build them or break them. Your environment is not just the physical space you live in. It is the psychological, emotional, and social atmosphere that surrounds you every single day. And whether you realize it or not, it is quietly shaping your behavior, your decisions, your discipline, and ultimately your destiny. You cannot expect yourself to rise to greatness if you are surrounded by mediocrity. You cannot expect to stay focused if your environment is filled with distractions. You cannot expect to be disciplined if everything around you is built for comfort instead of action. You cannot expect to think big if the people you interact with think small. The environment you choose determines the standard you live by. It is easier to stay disciplined when discipline is normal in your environment. It is easier to stay consistent when consistency is expected in your environment. It is easier to dream big when you are surrounded by people who think big. But when your environment conflicts with your goals, you will always feel like you're swimming against the current. Your environment should make success the default option, not the difficult one. Most people live in environments where failure, distraction, laziness, and delay are easier than discipline, focus, and consistency. They surround themselves with people who complain, procrastinate, make excuses, and settle for less. They fill their space with cluttered noise and temptations that constantly pull their attention away from growth. They keep habits and routines that drain their energy. Instead of building it, they allow negativity, chaos, and disorder to occupy their mental and emotional space. And then they wonder why they can't stay committed to their goals. They wonder why change feels so hard. They wonder why motivation fades so quickly. They don't realize that their environment is constantly pulling them back to the old version of themselves. If you want to build unstoppable habits, you must build an environment that supports those habits. The first step is to remove the obstacles that hold you back. If social media wastes your time, remove easy access to it. If late nights make you unproductive, restructure your evening. If your home is messy, clean it immediately. Cluttered spaces create cluttered minds. If certain people are draining your energy, set boundaries or distance yourself. If your bedroom makes you lazy, redesign it so it pushes you to wake up early. If your workspace distracts you, simplify it so it encourages focus. Small changes in your environment can create massive changes in your behavior. Your environment should reflect your goals. If you want to read more, make books visible. If you want to work out, prepare your equipment the night before. If you want to wake up early, put your alarm across the room. If you want to eat healthy, remove junk food from your house. If you want to save money, unsubscribe from temptations. Make the actions that lead to success easy and the actions that lead to failure hard. That is how you shape your environment to work for you instead of against you. But your environment is not only physical, it is also social. The people around you influence your habits more than you realize. If your friends avoid hard work, complain about everything, waste time, and choose comfort over challenge, you will slowly become more like them. Even if you don't want to, humans adapt to their surroundings. You begin to adopt the habits, expectations, and mindset of the people you spend time with. If you surround yourself with disciplined people, you will naturally become more disciplined. If you surround yourself with ambitious people, you will naturally dream bigger. If you surround yourself with people who honor their commitment, you will begin to honor yours. You rise or fall to the level of the environment around you. Sometimes the biggest step towards success is changing the company you keep. You need people who challenge you, who inspire you, who push you to grow, who refuse to let you settle. You need people who talk about goals, not gossip. You need people who talk about progress, not problems. You need people who encourage solutions, not excuses. You need people who live the lifestyle you aspire to. If you can't find these people physically, find them through books, videos, mentors, and online community. Surround yourself with the mindset you want to build. Another important part of building a success-driven environment is creating routines that automate discipline. Routine removes the need for decision-making. When your schedule is structured, your mind does not need to negotiate or debate what to do next. You eliminate confusion, hesitation, and procrastination. A strong routine becomes part of your environment because it gives your mind a familiar rhythm. It reduces friction and increases momentum. Morning routines, evening routines, work routines, health routine, talk routines. These create stability. They create repeatable patterns that build success over time. When your environment and your routines work together, discipline becomes effortless. Your environment also includes what you consume mentally, your input, the music you listen to, the content you watch, the conversations you engage in, the books you read, the things you scroll through. All of these shape your beliefs, emotions, and behaviors. If you consume negativity, you will think negatively. If you consume gossip, you will become unfocused. If you consume content that distracts you, you will drift away from your goals. But if you consume content that educates, inspires, or empowers you, you will grow. You must choose your mental diet carefully. Protect your mind as seriously as you protect your body. Feed it with ideas that stretch you, challenge you, and sharpen you. Your environment determines your energy. You cannot thrive in places that drain you emotionally, mentally, or spiritually. You must create surroundings that give you life, that strengthen your focus, that support your movement forward. Organize your home. Clean your workspace. Create a peaceful atmosphere. Add things that bring clarity and remove things that cause chaos. Your energy is one of your most valuable resources, and your environment either boosts it or destroys it. Success is not about willpower. It's about designing your life in a way that makes progress inevitable. When your environment supports your habits, you don't need to force discipline. It becomes natural. You don't need to push yourself constantly. Your surroundings pull you forward. You don't need constant motivation. Your structure sustains you. Most people fail not because they are weak, but because their environment is set up for them to fail. They try to grow in the same environment that created their limitation. They try to improve while staying surrounded by the same distractions. They try to become disciplined while being surrounded by comfort. But the environment always wins. You cannot defeat your environment through motivation alone. You must build a new environment that supports your new identity. One of the most powerful advantages of creating a success-driven environment is that it builds momentum. When you consistently wake up in a clean space, surrounded by reminders of your goals, reinforced by supportive people, fueled by productive routines, and protected from distractions, your growth becomes automatic. You begin to feel lighter mentally. You begin to think more clearly. You begin to act more decisively. You begin to take action without resistance. Momentum builds your confidence. Momentum builds your discipline. Momentum builds your belief that you can become unstoppable. And once momentum takes over, success becomes not just possible, it becomes expected. Your environment should also protect your goals. If you have a dream, you must protect it from negativity, from doubt, from laziness, and from the pressure of people who don't understand your vision. A strong environment acts like a shield. It guards your progress. It preserves your focus. It keeps your energy aligned with your purpose. When you build the right environment, you are no longer fighting against your surrounding. You are supported by them. In the end, your environment is a mirror of your future. If you look around and see chaos, distractions, negativity, and inconsistency, it means your life will continue in the same direction. But if you intentionally build an environment of clarity, discipline, structure, and positive influence, you create the path toward the life you want. Greatness does not grow in weak environments. Discipline does not grow in toxic atmospheres. Success does not grow where distractions dominate. You must build the environment that matches the level of greatness you aspire to. Your environment is always shaping you. The only question is whether you are shaping your environment. When you take control of your surrounding, you take control of your destiny. When you design a life that supports your growth becomes unstoppable. When you choose an environment that builds you instead of breaking you, success becomes not a matter of luck, but a matter of time. Momentum is the real superpower because once you begin to move in the right direction with consistency, something shifts inside of you and around you. You stop depending on sudden bursts of motivation and you start depending on a deeper force that carries you forward, even when the day is heavy, even when problems pull at your mind, even when excuses whisper in your ear. Momentum is invisible, but it changes everything. It is the silent partner in your success, the unseen engine behind your growth, the quiet energy that makes hard things feel lighter. Most people underestimate the power of momentum because they think success only comes from big leaps, big moments, or big opportunities. But momentum is built from small, repeated steps, from the simple choice to show up over and over again until showing up becomes who you are. When you are consistent long enough, something magical happens. The effort that once felt heavy starts to feel natural. The discipline that once felt forced becomes part of your identity. The sacrifices that once felt painful begin to feel purposeful. And the small wins that once felt insignificant stack up into something massive. Momentum is built slowly, quietly, almost secretly. But once it starts rolling, it becomes almost impossible to stop. Think about a snowball rolling down a hill. At the top, it's small and hard to move. You push and it barely shifts. But once it picks up speed, it grows, it strengthens, it accelerates. Soon it's moving based on its own weight and energy. That's how your life works. At first, change feels hard. Waking up early feels hard. Working out feels hard. Studying feels hard. Building routine feels hard. But when you do it, day after day, that initial resistance breaks. The heaviness lifts. Your brain adapts. Your habits become easier. And most importantly, you start to believe in yourself more and more because you see yourself doing what you once thought you could. Momentum builds confidence. Confidence builds action. Action builds results. And results build even more momentum. The cycle becomes self-feeding. Eventually, you are no longer pushing your life. You are being carried by the energy you created through your consistency. Momentum is also powerful because it protects you against setbacks. When you have no momentum, a small problem feels big. One mistake feels like a failure. One off day feels like a collapse. But when you have momentum, even big problems feel manageable. You recover faster. You adapt quicker. You don't quit because you've trained your mind to keep moving forward. Momentum gives you resilience, kind of internal shield against discouragement. When you've been consistent for weeks or months, your brain develops proof that you are capable. You have evidence that you can overcome resistance. That evidence becomes unshakable confidence. Without momentum, doubt controls you. With momentum, discipline guides you. You also start to attract opportunities when you build momentum. People notice your consistency, they see your growth, they feel your energy. Doors begin to open because people trust people who show up. Momentum makes you reliable not only in your own eyes, but in the eyes of others. Employer, partners, collaborators, mentors gravitate toward people who demonstrate follow-through and discipline. You don't have to talk about how committed you are. Your momentum speaks for you. It creates a reputation that becomes an asset. And the more you keep showing up, the more opportunities flow into your path, opportunities you would never have received if you only acted when you felt motivated. Momentum is also the key to breaking old patterns. A lot of people struggle to escape negative cycles because they live each day in isolation. They try one day of discipline, then fall off the next. They try 1 week of effort, then quit the moment life gets uncomfortable. But when you build momentum, you create a streak, a long chain of actions that resets your identity and replaces old habits with new ones. Every day you keep your streak alive. Your old identity weakens and your new identity strengthens. Every day you keep your promises to yourself. The voice of doubt gets quieter. Every day you choose discipline over comfort. The old version of you loses power. Momentum is what makes personal transformation real and lasting. But momentum only comes when you stop starting over. Most people never experience momentum because they quit too early. They take 2 steps forward and 3 steps back. They work hard for a week, then disappear for a month. They promise themselves change, but break the promise the moment the work gets tiring. The truth is, momentum requires a commitment to the boring, repetitive parts of growth. The early mornings, the late nights, the quiet grind, the uncelebrated effort. Momentum is built in the dark before it is seen in the light. And because it is invisible at first, most people convince themselves it isn't working. They want instant results. They want progress they can see. They want success that feels good immediately. But momentum rewards the patient, the consistent, the disciplined. It rewards those who keep going even when nothing seems to be changing. Because something is changing, you're building speed, power, and internal strength even when you don't see it yet. Momentum is emotional too. When you take daily action, your brain releases chemicals that make you feel accomplished. You start to enjoy the process. You start to thrive on productivity. You build self-trust. And when you trust yourself, discipline becomes easier. You stop asking, can I really do this? Because you've already proven that you can. You stop needing hype or motivation because your habits create their own internal energy. This emotional momentum is what separates people who last from people who quit. When you feel the emotional reward of progress, you want to keep going. You develop hunger, you develop drive, you develop focus, and most importantly, you develop the belief that you are capable of building the future you want. Momentum also changes your pace. When you first begin something, you move slowly. Tasks take longer. Discipline feels deliberate and forced. But once momentum kicks in, your speed increases. You start finishing tasks faster. You start making decisions quicker. You stop overthinking. You act instead of hesitating. You progress faster in 1 month of momentum than in a year of sporadic effort. This increase in speed is one of the most powerful aspects of momentum because it collapses time. What takes others years can take you months because you're not stopping and restarting. You are building continuously, stacking effort on top of effort. Another reason momentum is the real superpower is that it gives you clarity. When you move consistently, your mind becomes sharper. You begin to understand what works and what doesn't. You begin to see patterns in your behavior. You develop awareness of your strengths and weaknesses. You notice distractions more clearly and you eliminate them faster. Momentum cuts through confusion because action reveals answers. People who don't move stay confused. People who take daily action gain clarity through experience. And clarity fuels even stronger momentum. Momentum even influences how others treat you. People take you more seriously when you show consistency. They trust your commitment. They see your evolution. And that changes how they interact with you. They offer opportunities, resources, advice, and support. They respect your grind. Momentum communicates dedication without you saying a single word. It speaks for you in rooms you haven't even entered yet. That is the kind of power momentum holds. But the greatest power of momentum is that it transforms who you believe you are. Once you build enough consistency, you no longer identify as someone who struggled. You identify as someone who performs. You no longer see yourself as someone who quits. You see yourself as someone who finishes. Momentum builds a stronger, more resilient identity, and that identity becomes the foundation for your future success. You become unstoppable not because life gets easier, but because you become stronger, faster, clearer, and more disciplined. You become a force. Momentum does not require perfection. It requires persistence. It requires showing up even when the day is messy, even when you miss a step, even when life throws chaos your way. The goal is not to be perfect. The goal is to keep moving. Even a small step forward keeps momentum alive. Even a few minutes of discipline protects your consistency. You don't break momentum because of a mistake. You break momentum when you give up entirely. As long as you keep moving, you are still in the game. Momentum turns ordinary people into extraordinary achievers. It transforms impossible goals into reachable reality. It turns dreams into plans and plans into results. It takes your effort and multiplies it. It takes your discipline and amplifies it. And once momentum is in your favor, you become hard to stop, hard to doubt, and hard to defeat. You become someone who doesn't need to talk about success because your habits prove it. Momentum is built by choice. Momentum is sustained by discipline. Momentum becomes your superpower when you commit to consistency, when you stop starting over, when you stop quitting halfway, and when you start trusting the process even before the results show up. When you build momentum, you don't just change your action, you change your future. You don't just build habits, you build power. You don't just grow, you become unstoppable. Every journey comes to a point where you have to decide who you're going to be for the rest of your life. Not who people expect you to be, not who circumstances shaped you to be, not who your past mistakes suggest you should be, but who you choose to become from this moment forward. The message throughout everything we talked about, the message beneath the discipline, beneath the habits, beneath the consistency, beneath the momentum, is this. Your life changes the moment you decide that you will no longer betray the future waiting for you. Your life changes the moment you honor the version of yourself you know you can be. And that version of you is not built on hype, not built on emotion, not built on temporary bursts of energy. That version is built on daily choices, small sacrifices, and unstoppable habits that create an unstoppable human being. Conclusion to all of this is simple but powerful. Greatness is not something you chase. It's something you become through repetition, through commitment, through refusing to settle for anything less than your full potential. Motivation might light the spark, but habits feed the flame. Consistency keeps it alive. And momentum turns it into a fire so strong that not doubt, not fear, not setbacks, not criticism can put it out. You had to understand that the people who rise to the top are not the ones who feel inspired every morning. They are the ones who roll out of bed even when they don't want to. The ones who do the work when nobody is watching. The ones who build routines that operate even on their worst days. Because their habits are stronger than their excuses. You must walk away from this understanding that nothing you dream of is too far. Nothing you hope for is too late. Nothing you desire is too big. The only real barrier between you and the life you want is the number of times you choose comfort over commitment. When you choose comfort, you stay where you are. When you choose commitment, you move forward. Even if it's slow, even if it's small, even if it's not perfect, but forward is forward. Progress is progress. And every forward step feeds your momentum, even when you don't see the results right away. This journey toward building unstoppable habits is not glamorous. It's not always exciting. It's not always fun. But it is always worth it. It's in the quiet moments of discipline that you shape your destiny. It's in the moments where you say yes to the grind and no to the distractions that you rewrite your story. It's in the uncomfortable morning and the focused nights that you separate yourself from the version of you that settles and step into the version of you that dominates. Closing this out, I need you to realize that unstoppable habits are not about perfection. They are about intention. You don't need to be flawless. You need to be consistent. You don't need to be the strongest. You need to be willing. You don't need to know exactly how everything will unfold. You need to trust the process and show up anyway. That is how momentum begins. And once momentum starts, your life begins to shift in ways you never imagined. You become sharper. You become hungrier. You become more disciplined. You begin to see opportunities where you once saw obstacles. You begin to believe in yourself in ways you never could when you were inconsistent. The world responds differently to a person moving with momentum. A person who refuses to quit, refuses to slow down, refuses to negotiate with their excuses. Everything you do from this point on must align with the future you want. If your dreams require early mornings, start waking up earlier. If your goals require more knowledge, start reading more. If your transformation requires better habits, build them brick by brick. Don't wait for motivation to strike. Create a system so strong that motivation becomes a bonus, not the foundation. The life you want will not come from wishful thinking. It will come from daily discipline. It will come from using every day as an opportunity to reinforce the person you're becoming. And listen carefully. No matter how far you feel from your goals, no matter how many times you fall off track, no matter how long you've been stuck in the same cycle, momentum can be built at any moment you decide to start. You are one decision away from changing everything, one consistent week away from feeling the shift, one consistent month away from seeing the difference, one consistent year away from becoming unrecognizable to your old self. Momentum will carry you farther than motivation ever could, but you have to be the one to take the first step, the second step, the third step, until the steps start taking you. You owe it to yourself to stop playing small. You owe it to your future to stop letting distractions steal your potential. You owe it to your dreams to stop quitting halfway. You owe it to your purpose to build habits that reflect the greatness you were designed for. Do not let another day pass where you talk about change, but don't act on it. Do not let another moment slip away where you allow fear to slow you down or doubt to stop you. Your future is begging you to move. Your purpose is waiting for you to commit. Your success is calling your name. But it only reveals itself to the consistent, the disciplined, the persistent. You have everything you need to build a new life. Discipline, choice, effort, and momentum. You have the power to rewrite your story with the habits you choose to practice every single day. And if you choose the right habits, habits that align with your goals, habits that challenge you, habits that elevate you, then everything you desire becomes possible. Not through luck, not through talent, not through chance, but through discipline followed by momentum, followed by transformation. So as we close this out, ask yourself one question. Are you ready to stop living on motivation and start living on momentum? Are you ready to stop starting over and start following through? Are you ready to build yourself into someone unstoppable, not because you had an easy path, but because you had relentless habits? If the answer is yes, then today is the beginning. Today is the shift. Today is the moment where you stop living below your potential and rise into the person you were always meant to be. Because once you build momentum, real momentum, nothing and no one will be able to hold you back. You will not just move forward. You will not just grow. You will not just grow. You will not just improve. You will become unstoppable. And when you become unstoppable, everything changes, everything.